And so I challenge you to think about what are some other instances that involve alcohol that would require someone to intervene. And so one of those examples is comes into play when we talk about alcohol or other substances and sexual assault. It can be difficult to know if someone is too intoxicated to give consent, especially if you're under the influence too. When someone is under the influence of a substance, it's likely that they are experiencing lower inhibitions and impaired judgment. Another important part of obtaining consent is making sure that the other person is capable of mentally, physically, and verbally giving consent. So if you are, I always challenge people to think about if you're blackout, typically you don't know that you're blacked out until the next day. And so brownout is you remember bits and pieces of the night, but you don't remember everything. And so to everybody else, blackout, people who are blacked out look like they're going about their nights the same way. And so if somebody consents in that state, then that's technically not them giving consent, right? If they don't remember anything the next morning. And so, like I mentioned, it's difficult to know if somebody is too intoxicated. But ultimately, if somebody is buzzed or drunk, then we try not to make any big decisions. If somebody is at the point of incapacitation, they absolutely cannot consent. So, like I mentioned, it could be hard to tell, but some signs that you can look out for are loss of motor function, vomiting, slurred words, and declining cognitive function. Unfortunately, 90% of campus sexual assaults involve the use of alcohol. And this does not mean that alcohol causes sexual assault, but it is a substance that can make consent, which is already kind of gray, even more difficult to understand. So, even if both or all individuals are under the influence, it's important to know that the person who initiates any sexual act can be held responsible. And so if both people are drunk or under the influence, the excuse that, oh, I thought that they were fine because I was drunk too, so I couldn't know, da 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 da, whatever. It unfortunately, the person who initiates can still be held responsible. So if you ever have to question if somebody is too drunk to consent, then assume that they do or that they are. So I always say if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. A major component of avoiding sexual assault is obtaining consent, like we were talking about on the last slide. So, consent should be the first step of any sexual encounter. It is verbal, informed, voluntarily given, and a mutual agreement to participate in a particular activity. It also can be withdrawn at any time. So, we like to use the phrase consent is like fries freely given, reversible, informed, enthusiastic, and specific. Some examples of ways that you can ask for consent are, do you want to have sex? What do you want to do? Is it okay if I do X, Y, and Z? How does this feel? Or should I keep going? On the other hand, consent is not the absence of no, silence, being in a relationship, making assumptions, coercing, or intimidating. It's not a maybe, it's not an I don't know, or an I don't want this anymore. Understanding what counts as consent can be confusing. If you are unsure if you have consent, then once again, the safest option is to assume that you don't. So say it with me. If it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. Just to put things into perspective, here's some statistics for our students and rates of how much we are experiencing sexual assault while in college. So these numbers are pretty alarming and very sad. And when you look at these, it does look very different for men. So 1 in 16 men. But what I like to point out about this is that college age men, so the 18 to 24-ish range, are 4 to 5 times more likely to experience sexual assault if they are in college than without. So another way to say that, men ages 18 to 24 who are in college are 4 to 5 times more likely to experience sexual assault than those the same age who are not in college. So this statistic, although it looks different from the others, is still pretty important. So you can take a stand against sexual assault once again by being an active bystander, holding your friends accountable, and by promoting a culture of consent. Here's another scenario to practice the 3 to 5 Ds. You're at a bar when it closes, and while waiting for an Uber, your roommate is talking to a woman who is clearly slurring her words and swaying back and forth. He tells you that he wants the room for the night for himself and his new friend. Take some time to think about what you would do in this situation. What are the signs that this person may be too intoxicated to give consent? You may have to intervene in a situation where you or the potential victim might know the perpetrator. Don't assume just because you know them or they know them that they are not at risk. 80 to 90% of sexual assaults are most commonly perpetrated by acquaintances, and for college students, it's closer to 90%. An acquaintance could be a partner, a close friend, a friend of a friend, or just someone they recognize from class or their residence hall. So, unfortunately, given those statistics, there are going to be times where we know somebody who has experienced this. And when that happens, it is super important that you, number one, believe them. Statistically, we know that it happened. And if there was a room or reason to lie, then that friend may need some other like support, right? So we want to make sure that first of all we are believing them and we're never blaming them. So if somebody shares this with you, we want to make sure that we're really careful with the questions that we ask. Sometimes they come from a good place, like, did you tell the person no? Were you drinking? And even in those instances, those are good intentions and people are trying to figure out what's going on, but it still does apply like some blame, right? So it doesn't matter if somebody said no, did they say yes? Were they drinking? That also doesn't matter. We want to make sure that we're promoting our resources, and there's lots of resources around campus like Title IX, the Victims Advocate Unit with the UAB Police Department, and lots more. And we also want to make sure that we let them decide what they do about it. Obviously, when our friend shares something like this with us, we want to make sure that that person pays, right? We want to hold them accountable for what they've done. But ultimately, your friend or whoever is sharing this with you has just gotten a lot of their autonomy ripped away, right? So the last thing we want to do is to further that and take charge of this situation. Okay, so we've talked a lot about consent, and consent is great and wonderful, and we love it, but consent is our favorite bare minimum, right? We want to make sure that we are doing more than that. So let's talk about what that looks like. We want to make sure that we are being sex positive. And what that means is it's a culture where everyone, regardless of any of their practices, can make their own sexual decisions without judgment or stigma. One in which men and women and non binary people alike recognize the value in communicating before and during sex. One in which boundaries are respected and not seen as a challenge to break. It takes some rewiring to start thinking about sex in a positive way because most of us have been conditioned to think that sex is a really taboo topic. One quality of being sex positive is to understand that sex is natural and a natural and healthy part of life, and it isn't something that you should be embarrassed about. Some other qualities of a sex positive person are recognizing that sexual boundaries should be respected, um, accepting other people's orientations, lifestyles, practices, all of those things, and then being more open to learning about sex and sexual activity. I always like to say that we aren't here to yuck anybody's yums. If you don't like it, don't participate in it, right? So once again, we have to be accepting and respect other people's sexual behaviors. If they're being safe and getting consent, we shouldn't yuck their yum. And so the way that I always think about this is that I'm a super picky eater. Like I'm a super picky eater, and my least favorite food is onions. So if Everybody, if I don't like onions, I can't expect nobody else to like onions, right? And if I'm sitting there while somebody is eating and I'm like, ew, 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 nasty, I hate onions, what does that do for anybody, right? Let people enjoy their meal, let people enjoy what they like. And once again, if you don't like it, don't participate in it.